Good evening, everyone, and welcome to On the Spot. My name is Mona Davids, and I am the host of On the Spot, a political roundup of the latest political news here in New York City, New York State, national, as well as global. Tonight's guests for On the Spot are Michael Benjamin, uh, who is with the New York Post.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. Michael, if you could just briefly tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I'm an ex state assemblyman from the Bronx, Morris Senior. Served in the assembly for about 8 years, from 2003 to the end of 2010. And since then, I became a columnist at the New York Post, and now I'm working full time as a associate editorial page editor, where I get to write columns and also get to write unsigned editorials about government politics, public policy, all the things that are important to New Yorkers, focusing primarily on education issues, crime, and other issues that are important to the day and also important to me.
Okay. Our second guest is Leonardo Coelho. Leonardo, if you could welcome and if you could introduce yourself.
Hey, Mona. My name is Leonardo Coelho. I am the Vice President of Victory Systems Elections. And just a quick, interesting note, Michael Benjamin was actually my assembly person because I live in the Morrisania area. So he was my assembly person for some time.
Oh, wow, look at that. We were also supposed to be joined by Michael Oliva, but he is a bit delayed. So we're hoping that he will be able to join us during the hour. But what we're going to do is we're going to get today's show started because a lot has happened in our local and state politics within just this past week. So I want to get started first. And I know I touch on this. I think our viewers at this point, know my opinion when it comes to our public advocate, Jumaane Williams. We disagree when it comes to school safety because, of course, I don't support Jumaane's position that we should remove school safety agents from our schools. And I think this, just the last week, even up until yesterday with the stabbing at Truman High School in the Bronx, 1 week after another stabbing incident at Truman High School in the Bronx, and the other slashing, stabbings, and gun violence around the schools that we've been experiencing since the first day of school. I don't agree with Jumaane's position. And then also, as a Black woman from the Bronx, the fact that the supermajority of our school safety agents are Black, Hispanic, and Asian women. They are mothers, they are grandmothers, and they keep our children safe, unarmed in school every day. I have a problem with anyone trying to eliminate the jobs of mothers and grandmothers. That being said, Jumaane ran for lieutenant governor a few years ago, and he has always been critical of former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Now we have Cuomo's lieutenant governor, Kathy Hochul, who is now our governor and who immediately announced that she will be running in the primary. She will be running for governor, but Jumaane recently announced, I'm sure we've all been kind of expecting it, but Jumaane announced that he has created an exploratory committee to explore running for governor. So, I'm I'm going to go with Leonato and put you on the spot first today. So, Leonato, do you think Jumaane is going to run, or do you think he's just seriously exploring, or is this the first step of him finally just saying, "I'm running"?
Well, I mean, Mona, I think he's going to run. I think you don't put together committees and waste people's time if it's not in your heart to really do this and stuff like that. Yeah, it's exploratory. It's going to come across like they're having conversations about things, but I think he's going to run. Ultimately, let's think about it. He's probably going to win in November. He's going to be the public advocate to about what 4 more years or whatever the case is. If he loses the governor's race, he just falls back to being the public advocate. So there isn't much to lose. To me, there's only gain for him. It can raise his visibility. If he runs a really good, strong campaign, even if he loses, he falls. And then, like I said, he always falls back to the safety net of being the public advocate. But it's not a slam dunk though. There's a lot to consider. The fact that the two major things that Jumane's known for is criminal justice reform and affordable housing, along with some other things. But we got to think about how does that play on his views on those things play on a state level, which now he's kind of seen more on the progressive side of things. And then, with the announcement of folks like Brad Lander and Antonio Reynoso, who are also part of that progressive side, them being a part of that committee, he's really sending the progressive flag up saying, yeah, I'm going to be leading this ship for this governor race as the progressive candidate.
So I have follow-up questions for you, Leonardo, but I first want to get Michael's take. Michael, do you think this is genuine exploratory committee, or he is going to run, but he's just saying that for now?
He's being coy, and we called it a couple of weeks ago when the Post editorial board called out public advocate Jumaane Williams for his campaign fundraiser. Email blast went out calling for New Yorkers who support him to give him more money so he can qualify for matching funds, reach the upper limit, which would have given him between $1 million and $4 million in public money. We called him out for that, knowing that number one, he has no significant opponent in the general election, so why do you need public money? And two, we surmise that he's really doing it to raise his profile in a possible run for governor, and also the ability to raise additional money for the comptroller's race. And if he declines public matching funds, he could then take that money for comptroller, the private dollars, and move that to a state account to run for governor. And that would be his seat account for his gubernatorial run. So we called him out on that. And then we saw this week that he's announced information of an exploratory committee. And I wouldn't doubt in the next week, after the filings are made for the New York City Campaign Finance Board, that he will meet the matching levels, the thresholds, and then decline any public match. And then after the election, and he's safely the public advocate sometime in January, he will transfer that money into a state campaign account for governor. So yeah, we're not. I was not surprised that he announced the formation of this committee and that he's running as the standard bearer for progressives across the state of New York. And to Leonardo's point, recently in the last month or so, he's been going around the state. He's been in Western New York, where he did quite well in the lieutenant governor's race support, and now he's supporting India Walton, a Democratic socialist who's running for mayor of Buffalo, who upset the 20-year incumbent Brooklynite Byron Brown in a surprise upset defeat in the June primary. So he has her support, I would imagine. And he also was recently in upstate, I forget, somewhere in the Hudson Valley. I forgot which town, but he was there on his affordable housing platform, supporting affordable housing up there. So that gave us clues that he's looking at building this coalition across the state around the issues important to him: criminal justice reform, affordable housing, and in his mind, he said, also, as everybody wants to do, is to clear up the corruption in Albany.
So I just want to clarify something, Michael. So you were saying that from his campaign, from his CFB account, money that is not matched, he can transfer that to a state account?
Yes, he can. If he declines a public match, he can then, whatever money he doesn't spend in his race for public advocate, he could then take that, all private cash, and then transfer that to a state account. I checked it out with the attorney and with the folks at the CFB, and that's exactly what can happen. Oh, this is Max.
Hi, Max.
What'd you do, buddy? What'd you do?
Okay, well, that's really
I'm back.
Interesting to know. I didn't know that they could do it the other way. I knew that you could transfer from the state when you're running for a city position and put the money. That's very interesting. So here, my question, coming back to you, Leonato, following up on like what you said. So, one of the things that Republicans do, or what Republicans did, is, I call it the fear mongering, and that is, they always tell upstate voters, upstate New Yorkers, hey, Democrats are trying to make upstate be like New York City, which is with the lawlessness and the public safety problems. They would always fearmonger and say, do you really want upstate New York to be like de Blasio's New York? De Blasio's New York City. Looking at Jumaane is even left of de Blasio, if that's even possible. So my question to you is, how do you think upstate voters, granted he did well with the lieutenant governor race. I mean, he did more than decent. I will be honest with that. But how do you think upstate voters are going to respond to Jumaane with his criminal justice reform and the bail reform, which upstate voters do not support? They're not happy about that. When it comes to, of course, his attack on school safety agents, Teamsters in general are not happy about that. So they will be meeting him upstate wherever he goes, the whole Teamsters family. And then when we look at a lot of the so-called socialist issues, what they're trying to push, how do you think overall will upstate voters respond to him?
Yeah, Mona, you hit it right on the head. The Republican, playbook is going to be exactly that when it comes in terms of Jumaane. Even to the point, like you're seeing all the violence and everything that's even still currently happening, and yet you're the public advocate. You're the city's public advocate. And you have done, and they're going to say you have done nothing to move the needle in terms of safety here in the city. How in the world would you be able to keep our entire state safe, right? Like that's going to be the narrative. I mean, they're going to hammer that home. But I tell you this, that's just not going to be the Republicans' playbook. I think that some other candidates that are not, quote unquote, progressive candidates are going to have that playbook in a light version, right? Because, you don't want to completely go away from, some of the progressive ideas, because the Democrats are in a funny place where they do have to embrace some of those things, but they, like you said, they don't want to go all the way as far as that left, that Jumaane. So you have the playbook, and then you have playbook light, all right? And I think they'll be using that, really, really, really heavy against him. And who knows? I mean, I think the challenges that's going to happen is that, here's one thing that I'm interested about, and how he's going to approach it. When Jumaane ran for lieutenant governor, he looked at the lieutenant governor position almost like a check and balance position to the governor. And the narrative around the lieutenant governor has kind of shifted a little bit, because to me, the way that Governor Hochul is approaching it with Lieutenant Governor Benjamin, is that they're almost like, we're on the same page together. So does Jumaane now take that approach as well too, where when you was running, you looked at it as a check and balance? So are you looking for somebody that's going to run, that's going to be kind of a check and balance for you, or are you looking for somebody that's almost going to be like a same ticket type of person for you to combat what Governor Hochul has on the other side? But yeah, Mona, you hit it right in the head. That's the playbook is already set of how they're going to approach Jumaane on all levels.
No, and I think another point, like you said, he is supposed to be the public advocate, but he tends to only advocate for issues that serve his interests, not the interests of New Yorkers. And the other thing also is that he only engages those who are useful to his agenda or to his political ambitions. And I do think that the other Democratic candidates are going to find a way, because there's always a way, you find a way to bring stuff up, are going to bring up these issues. Michael, Jumaane, like I was saying to Leonato, he did fairly well in his race against Hochul in the lieutenant governor race. And we see that he's busy, doing his little, press conferences and rallies for whatever is happening in different upstate locales. But do you think that he's going to get, the type of support voter-wise as he did with lieutenant governor, considering now he's actually running for governor? How will upstate voters respond to him? Michael, you're on mute.
Not the way in which they did when he ran for lieutenant governor. I believe they're wiser to him. He's now running for the big seat, as is Hochul. She's much better known than she was when he ran against her. She was kind of vulnerable to his progressive left appeal in a race that a lot of voters don't always vote in. So he had that in his favor. Now he's running for the big enchilada. You have a lot of attention, a lot of focus. You may even have other Democratic challengers who are also on the left and would be challenging to him, and all of them trying to beat Hochul. I mean, if you have Tish James, the Attorney General, who's everyone speculating may be running for governor, especially after her remarks yesterday to the Association for a Better New York, and criticizing Cuomo and saying she's taking the gloves off, will defend her probe of his sexual harassment of his staff and others. Then I've forgotten who the other left candidate might be, but I mean, I'm understanding that the congressman from Long Island, who was the NASA executive, he may also throw his hat into the ring to run for governor. Tom Suozzi. Suozzi has a very powerful constituency. Italian Americans are a big voting bloc factor in New York State, and Suozzi may think this may be the time for him to run, but he may be dissuaded from running because the Democrats need to hold on to the House. But whatever you have, if you have candidates who are to the left of Hochul running for governor, it makes the road a little bit easier for Hochul, to hold on to moderate conservative Democrats across the state and to win in a multi-person, multi-candidate race. Jumaane had a better chance against him when it was one-on-one. This may not be a one-on-one race, and he'll be much better known, and he'll be criticized across the state for his positions on the police, on law enforcement, his position on criminal justice reform, and many communities upstate have experienced tremendous spikes in crimes, from shootings to robberies to all sorts of crimes that were going down, but since the pandemic and since the introduction of criminal justice reform, the no bail reforms, and others that have seen crime rising across the state. In fact, I believe I read this morning that upstate New York has experienced a higher spike in crime trends than the national average. That's something. When the FBI statistics are showing that in 2020, upstate communities experienced higher rates of crime than the national average. So for folks who are running as criminal justice reformers who are proud of their no bail laws and raise the age and other reforms that have unleashed the bad guys in communities of color across the state, because primarily it's those communities that have been the victims of increasing crime, whether it's here in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, or Buffalo, Rochester. Those are communities that are feeling the brunt of some of these reforms and the and the way in which criminals feel that they have the streets and the cops can't do anything to them. The courts release them back into the streets so they can intimidate witnesses, and how they ever get to trial, and they think they can beat the rap. We're seeing large numbers, increasing numbers of young people, adolescents under 18, who've been shot and killed recently. We're going to raise the issue. The Post editorial board in a couple of days, going to raise the issue, like, where is the outrage and the anger that so many young Black boys and girls are being shot and stabbed? But where's the outrage among the professional outrage class, the folks who will get to the street and march on a moment's notice if a cop shoots a Black criminal? But if a Black criminal shoots a young Black kid, all you ever see out there is Anthony Herbert and maybe a couple other folks.
That's true. The whole, if, and I always bring it up because if it's something with the police, then you see the entire progressive alphabet. I call it the alphabet because then you see all the different acronyms coming out, whether it's the NYCC, the MTR, the Make the Road, you name it. It's like just an alphabet of progressive organizations. They come out, but clearly the lives of Black teenagers, the lives of Black children, Black and Hispanic children only matter when they killed by a police officer. Because with everything that's going on, with all the surge in gun violence, the teen shootings, teen slashings, stabbings, what's going on in our schools and around the schools and in our communities that are under siege, literally under siege, crickets. And that's a problem. Because what you're telling me is that the life of my 13-year-old young son, young Black man that I'm raising, if someone were to gun him down, or if he were to be assaulted by someone else, it won't matter. Or it'll only matter, and people will only care, or the professional activist class and elected officials will only care if it's a police officer. That's the bottom line. And that's a whole other conversation that we need to have, because we have to address Black on Black crime, Black on Black violence. Like, that is something that we have to have a family conversation about it. But unfortunately that'll be at another time. But you're right, Michael. Those same bail reforms, the same problems or issues that we have here in New York City with the bail reforms, it's also going on in Syracuse, in Buffalo. It's going on upstate, in Poughkeepsie, in Peekskill. Like, they're experiencing the same problem. So it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to play out. And I think that Leonardo was right. I'm sure Hochul's team are ready. I'm sure they have their information. They're going to be coming out with, indirectly, of course, with all of these receipts and say, well, look, you want this man to be governor. Look at what did he do as a public advocate? How did he help New Yorkers? So did he engage everyone? So I think it's going to be very interesting to watch this. But speaking of the governor race, Tish, what's you guys' position on Tish? Do you think, Leonardo, that Tish is going to throw her hat in the ring? You think she's going to run?
I don't think so.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead. I don't think she's going to run.
Yeah, so I was feeling just like, Michael was not too long ago. But now with the recent statements that she made, regarding taking the gloves off, like, when somebody uses that statement, I'm taking the gloves off, they're setting up to do a different type of fighting, right? Like, so she's been in the fight already with Cuomo. She's been she led, a lot of the investigations and everything. But now she's saying she's gonna take it to another level now. So, that just says to me that she might be, if she wasn't considering it before, she's definitely considering it now. I think she's just looking maybe for ways how to jump into it the right way, There might be some other conversations happening with, the Jumanis of the world and whoever else is running, because I do think that, these people are intelligent people, and I know they have to understand that, they're going to hurt each other, when they run, if they both run in this race and stuff. And so there has to be some sit down conversations about, how we're going to do this. Are we both jumping in? What's the political strategy behind it? Because it is going to be difficult for both of them to jump in and try to go up against Hochul, dividing that vote and stuff.
Michael, you don't think so?
I don't think she runs. Yes, she said she's taking the gloves off, but Cuomo is on the ballot. He's not running for governor, so takes the gloves off and batters him. Doesn't really matter because he's not a candidate. Take the gloves off and batter Hochul, who really had no power, no control, wasn't involved at all in any of the cover-up or any of the sexual harassment, any effort to minimize or to discredit the women who accused him. Yes, I don't think she does it. I don't think it's sort of in her DNA at this time. I think she'll stay put, run for attorney general, see what happens. Chuck Schumer may not be U.S. Senator for much longer. Our junior senator, Gillibrand, she may decide to go do something else. Something happens, it opens up a spot for her to be appointed by the governor as the first female black senator from New York State. I think she can hold on and wait and not run for governor. I don't think she has that there's a reason, there's an agenda for her running for governor. She hasn't used the attorney general spot to set her up for a statewide run for governor. Yes, she has name recognition as the attorney general, but she doesn't have anything else behind her. She doesn't even have Donald Trump's tax scalp on her waist to pick up and wave around. I got Donald Trump. That's not there. I got Andrew Cuomo to resign because he didn't want to face impeachment. I don't think that's enough of a motive for voters to make her governor for her to think she's going to run for governor and win in a 3 to 4 person Democratic primary in June.
Well, I mean, what was the breakfast that she was at this week? Was it Abney?
Abney, yes. Association for Better New York.
Yes, where where she said that the last person to speak is now the Democratic nominee, and we don't know what she's going to be the Democratic nominee for next year. So, I mean,
it was a clever joke. She knows it's a clever joke. She knows what was being said about her possibly running for governor. So if you're a smart politician, you're going to use that as a foil, as a joke, to set up your audience for your coming remarks, where she was going to be, responding and attacking Andrew Cuomo, who's no longer the chief executive of New York State. He's a private citizen sitting on a yacht with a scruffy beard and a dog he barely knows.
But what about Louis Miranda making calls for her? I mean,
that's Miram. That's what they do. They need to make money as consultants. You got to get your candidate out there. You want to have your candidate out there running for governor. You want to test the waters. That's what he does. I get that. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a real, campaign, for governor. And they do good things as consultants, but I don't think they have a very large track record for winning in large, meaningful races, to tell you the truth.
But didn't they work on her campaign for attorney general?
Yeah, that was a gimme. She was there. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't she put there by Andrew Cuomo? It wasn't a real election. I mean, she held the title and then ran, and then ran. I think, or did she even run at all? Whichever. I mean, the last race, the big race they won, was her race in public advocate. I really would like somebody to point out to me the big race that Miriam has won in the last 4 years, other than her as a New York City public advocate.
Interesting. Good point. Well, I think she's going to run. So I guess we're gonna have to see what happens. I think she's going to run. But
she needs to have a scalp on the table. She's got to have something on the table to say this is what I've done. This is why you need to make me your governor. I don't think she has a big record as attorney general to justify running for governor. As I said, her big case was going to be Donald Trump. That's still sitting out there. Yeah, she may have pushed Cuomo out of office, but he was really pushed out by the fear of an assembly impeachment and the fact that Speaker Hasty couldn't protect him from a very angry assembly that was willing to push him out of office because they thought he was wrong, and they also wanted to appease their constituency. Once the speaker realized he had no control over his conference and they were going to vote for impeachment no matter what, the handwriting was on the wall. Regardless of what Tish's report said, no matter how it backed up his accusers, he was done.
Interesting. Well, I guess we're going to have to see what the outcome is going to be. But, a lot of people are waiting to see what Tish is going to do. Before we move from, this state race, I want to just talk about the lieutenant governor race, and Leonato and you, Michael, as well, kind of touched on it. So here is my question: do you see anyone on the Democratic side running for lieutenant governor? Do you see Brian Benjamin having a Democratic primary?
I'll say we, because I'm still a Democrat and I still have it in my DNA as a former elected official. We eat each other. We're cannibals. It's an open office. He's going to get a challenger. What I think will be delicious is when Jumaane runs against Hochul, and then she sends Brian out to attack him on his criminal justice and anti-police rhetoric.
Yeah, but Brian supports that.
Yes, but he's also working for his governor. And, he's going to try to find nuances to show where Jumaane went too far in, apparently, I imagine he went too far in some of his thoughts, and that he might not want to have him as governor pushing things even further. I just think it'll be delicious to see it happen, to see how it's handled and whether or not that will be his assignment as Hochul's attack person on Jumani.
Interesting. What do you think, Leonardo?
Yeah, going back to my last statement, like I'm really curious of how they're going to approach this lieutenant governor, because he can take it in different ways. He can take it in a way where, does he look for somebody that can kind of counterbalance his progressiveness but still yet match up well with him, and kind of present it to the state as like, hey, yeah, I'm very progressive, but this lieutenant governor is going to kind of be my balance and stuff, kind of how, like, a lot of times I see they do with when the president and vice president, right? They always look for that kind of match, whereas like they're a little different, but they complement each other and all of that stuff. So, maybe, if he looks for somebody like that, it can give him a little bit of little more air under his wings. But I don't know what their approach is going to be, to be honest with you. Like, I don't see how he envisions how that role could help him, or if it's something like, I'm just going to pay attention to my race, whatever happens with Lieutenant Governor, happens and stuff.
Okay. Little Africa, we are a nonpartisan show. I just want to make sure that is clear. We are nonpartisan. So, and, I've been somewhat neglectful of the other side. So I just want to talk about, Lee Zeldin. He's been very, very busy reaching out to different communities, crisscrossing the state. He's, down to earth. I think voters find him charismatic. Michael, do you think that he has a serious chance against Hochul? Because it's not a New York City thing, it's a New York State thing. So, when I visit places upstate and I drive through some areas upstate New York, there are a lot of Republicans outside of New York City. Like, people need to understand, just like, New York City is not the center of the universe when it comes to state races, for statewide races, like for governor, the same way the Northeast is not the center of the country. So, Michael, what is your take? I mean, how do you see a matchup of Zeldin versus Jumani and Zeldin versus Hochul going?
Zeldin versus Hochul is a win for Hochul. I think Hochul, like any other Democrat who we the nominee, other than, let's say, Jumani, would, as the nominee, would be able to hold on to the 10 important counties in New York State when it comes to a general election. It would be the 5 counties of the city, the 5 outlying suburban counties, including Nassau and then Suffolk, which are controlled by Democratic machines. And then the 2 large upstate counties that are heavily Democratic, Monroe and Erie. You get those 12 counties out of the 62, you win the election. That has always been the pattern. You win those 10 to 12, you win the election, because you win the other smaller Democratic counties. So I don't see where Zeldin really beats her that way. He was also a supporter of President Trump, and that's a bit of baggage he's going to have to carry in a general election in 2022. And in a sense, Trump will be on the ballot as well as Joe Biden. So I think he'll have trouble in a run against, say, if Jumani Williams were to win the Democratic primary. I think Zeldin would have a greater appeal to moderates and conservative Democrats who would be concerned about a Jumani Williams administration in Albany. So his bet would be to pray that Jumani wins the primary against Hochul. But he also may have his own primary. As you know, Andrew Giuliani is going around the state claiming that he's running for governor of New York for the Republican nomination. Many of the Republican county leaders are pushing for Zeldin, but Giuliani has name recognition. He may be able to raise the money. Donald Trump may help him. I don't know. His dad may help him. He may raise enough money to at least be on the ballot and to force Zeldin to have to campaign and spend money in a primary. Who knows? But Zeldin would probably beat him, and he'll have 4 or 5 months of a sustained campaign between himself and the Democrat running for governor, which would be quite unusual to have. What used to be a 2-month or a 6-week campaign will be over the course of June or July through November. It'll be a lot of money spent on campaign ads, radio, TV, and a lot of mud throwing. It'll be interesting to see what transpires, and I know that the media will be happy to have these sort of things to cover and to discuss. There are things that are happening in the state that need to be looked at. You have the citing of the green energy stuff that Cuomo and now Hochul are pushing. Upstate communities are not really into that right now. We'll see what happens. So Zeldin will have some issues to go after and to focus on to distinguish himself from the Democratic nominee, whether it's Williams or Hochul. In my view, it will be Hochul, and definitely won't be Jane, because she's not running. She won't be running for governor, in my view. I mean, I could be wrong. Zeldin has work to do. The Republicans are at a severe disadvantage electorally in New York State. He's going to have to find those key issues that will win him votes beyond his base on Long Island, and win him the suburban Democratic voters, and like I said, those key counties, suburban counties outside of New York City.
Yeah,
Leonardo?
I agree with everything Michael said. I do think that Trump will play a significant role in who wins the Republican primary. He's still kind of the face of the Republican Party. So as things are happening nationally, I think it can trickle down, and it will trickle down to Republican candidates and stuff. And so I do feel like, and it's going to be tough for him, because it's like these Republican candidates, they need the fundraising that Trump provides, and kind of like the red meat to galvanize their their base. But then some of the issues that come up are a little damaging and stuff. So they're in a tough place with with a double-edged sword when it comes to Trump that cuts both ways. But I don't really see. I don't see him. A Republican. No matter which candidate gets out of the Republican primary, having that much of a chance against Governor Hochul.
Okay. Well, we're gonna see. I don't know of any other Republican running. I don't know if you gentlemen know of any other Republican possibly running. Only person I see is Lee Zeldin, who is just out there. So,
I mentioned Andrew Giuliani. He's a candidate.
I can't take him seriously. Whenever I think of him, I think of that little boy, he still reminds me of a snot-faced kid. So I'm sorry, I just don't see it. But
again, it shows where that party is right now, and when it comes to having a bench of strong candidates to contend for statewide, even citywide races here in New York, they have a hard time coming up with candidates. I know many are not happy with that Curtis Sliwa is their standard bearer in the New York City election, and you see some Republicans that are out there actually have endorsed and raised money for Eric Adams.
Right, yeah.
Normally, they'd stick with the Republican nominee. That's not happening this year. So I think
maybe it's the red.
Similar. They have something similar happening because the party is not that strong. I mean, I'll give credit to the state chairman for trying to inject some life back into the Republican Party. He's trying to do that upstate, but upstate he doesn't have the numbers outside of New York City, and you need to have much larger numbers to win, and you also have to have a party that can, at least in many other issues, appeal to moderate Democrats and conservative Democrats who could see themselves voting for Republican for governor. But I've yet to see the Republicans on issues other than criminal justice and crime going after other issues that draw in, independents and the more moderate to conservative Democrats.
No, that's true. You're right about that. So
I mean, there's a lot that's out there, but they killed themselves, in my view, over the years, in opposing one of their own programs, which was the Common Core, opposing standardized testing. I mean, those used to be Republican. Those are Republican ideas, where you would have a common core of knowledge that kids everywhere would have to know and learn in order to be well-rounded and considered educated. They moved away from that, and to me, that didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that was a whole other fight. That was a whole other battle. People are still licking their wounds from that. I mean, they ran John King out of the state over that. But I want to talk about
look where we are now.
Hey,
look where we are now. I mean, education. I was a Common Core guy. I supported King when he was the education commissioner. A lot of the things he talked about made sense. Things that would advance all children, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. It would have improved education in New York. What killed it was the UFT and NYSLIT, who didn't want Common Core used and the associated testing tied to their evaluations and holding teachers accountable for the outcomes. And that's why they opposed Common Core as their Trojan horse to kill and destroy any kind of a reasonable teacher accountability. And then you had the Republicans joining in, and then you had Cuomo eventually backing off of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been to the detriment of New York City students across the state. And now they're talking about backing away from honors programs, backing away from grading children. Now they're talking about having the parents and the teachers coming together to determine a student's grade. Now that's insane.
Yeah, well, we're pretty much on the same page when it comes to education issues. But yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. But I want to talk about the vaccine mandates. Okay, so our new governor has pretty much put her foot down when it comes to the vaccine mandates. With regards to our healthcare workers, it's you're either vaccinated or you're out of a job. Not only that, but she also signed the executive order to expedite visas for foreign workers to come and, replace New York State healthcare workers, nurses, and others who are refusing the vaccine. And my problem with that is this. And this is what I don't understand. And I'm not taking a position on requiring people to take it. I'm not talking about that. But this is what bothers me. Last year, those people were heroes. They were heroes before we had a vaccine. They were heroes before we knew what the hell COVID was. And, what COVID does to our bodies. They put their lives on the line. They put the lives of their family members, their children, by exposing themselves, working when people were dropping like flies. So these people who were our heroes, who risked their lives for us, are now being thrown out like they're trash. And I have a problem with that. I have a very big problem with that. And for me, I will say it. So I don't know what I'm going to do come June, much less come November 2022. But I will tell you this. For me, and I'm going to say it, and I don't care if Kathy Hochul never comes on my show or whatever for Meet the Candidate. I don't care. Kathy Hochul, you lost my vote when you made our healthcare workers the enemy. That's my opinion. I'm saying it. It's just I don't understand. But my question for you, gentlemen, is this: do you think that Kathy Hochul putting her foot down, bringing in foreign workers to replace our New York State healthcare workers, do you think that may affect the campaign? Do you think that will affect, who people, her votes? Do you think that'll come back to bite her in the rear end? I'll start with you, Leonato.
Well, obviously, it did impact. It's going to impact the election because she just lost your vote, according to you. So that's.
Oh hell, yep, she lost it. That was it. That was it.
That's an impact. Like, yeah, that's an impact from the start already. But, to your question, Mona, I'll go on the record saying that I agree with the mandates. I think it's a tough narrative. Yeah, those folks were our heroes. They still are our heroes. They still are heroes. But the governor had to make a very tough decision. Teachers had to get vaccinated. The individuals that are working were our most vulnerable. It always comes down to me at the end of the day, like these decisions, if they are going to advocate and support the ones that can't advocate for themselves, I'm for it. The children in our schools can't advocate for themselves. So I agree with the mandate. The individuals that are sick in the hospitals with possibly other type of sicknesses and stuff like that, these mandates advocate for them, to have the ability to, not, further risk their lives with, possibly a healthcare worker bringing in, the COVID-19 virus or a different type of, the Delta or anything else and stuff. So, I agree with it. I don't think that it's going to hurt her in a major way. To be honest with you, numbers are going down. They just CNN just reported that, the death rates are at almost an all-time low since like June of last year. And so what I believe is going to happen is the rates are going to continue to go down. Everybody that's really upset about, these mandates, once those numbers get to us, really low, and those graphs and those lines start really going down, it's like come primary next year, it's going to be hard to argue with those numbers and stuff, and I get the emotions that come out of these decisions right now, but it's something that had to be done. Election wise, I don't think it has any impact by the time the primary comes around and the death rates are, starting to hit rock bottom. Hopefully it's not going to impact her at all.
That's an interesting perspective on that. But again, yes, it's important that we try to flatten the curve. But to your point, those same healthcare workers were there when that curve was like this. I just think that there should have been another way. But I understand what you're saying, and people, the public have short memories. They have short memories. So you're likely right, Leonardo. Most likely you're correct. Michael, what's your take on it?
Oh, I'm pro-vaccine. The healthcare workers heroically did their jobs. They saved lives. Many of their colleagues lost their lives in the fight against COVID. And I would think, out of memory and honor of their memory, healthcare workers would take the vaccine because their colleagues sacrificed themselves to save lives, to buy time for a vaccine. By not taking it, they're rejecting the sacrifice and dishonoring the sacrifice of their colleagues. The vaccine, they already are taking vaccines in order to have their employment, whether it's the TB vaccine or other vaccines that healthcare workers must take in order to work in that environment. They already rolled up their sleeves and took those shots. COVID is not that different. I only am opposed to the vaccine for kids under 5. I think that should have the normal review process to see what the effects are. But we know that for adults, it has had very minimal effects on the health of people who've taken the shots. And those people who are suffering from COVID-19 now, whether it's the Delta variant or the run-of-the-mill COVID-19, are the unvaccinated. 90% of those that are hospitalized and dying are unvaccinated Americans. Healthcare workers need to recognize that and do their share and stop politicizing everything. And whether it's a mask mandate or it's a vaccine mandate, it's your job to save lives. It's part of what you do for a living. You roll up your sleeves and you take the shot. I understand the union's opposition because while they support the vaccine, people taking it, they think it should be part of the collective bargaining process. While the courts have told them, you're wrong. When it comes to public health, the mayor, the governor, they have the ability to protect the public health and make these requirements on you. The courts are not going to side. Very rarely have courts in the past gone against public health decisions. They have the jurists will tell you they don't have that knowledge. They will cede that knowledge to the public health professionals who are saying, you take the vaccine, it'll protect patients, it'll protect your co-workers, and that's why they're and the EOC signaled months ago that employer mandated vaccines are legal and would be supported by the federal government, and workers would be required to obey the mandates or they would lose their jobs. I mean, United Airlines is looking at laying off, firing up to 600 workers who refuse to take the shot. I mean, people want to fly. People want to go back to business. You do that, you restore the economies here and around the world if people take the vaccine, get healthy, and resume normal living. That's what we've been advocating at the New York Post editorially. Let's get back to normalcy. The vaccine is a route to normalcy. Anyone who refuses, they are thumbing their noses at the ability for our nation to recover economically, for our children to prosper and to go to school, and for patients and their colleagues to do their jobs without dying. That should be clear to them. So yeah, I'm pro mandates on the vaccine in the healthcare setting. I believe today the Times Union had a story saying that Hochul's healthcare mandate, has a loophole. Persons who are in mental health facilities or elsewhere aren't covered. Well, she explained that today. She only is able at present to move it on agencies that are covered, workers that are regulated by the state health department. She's currently working right now, as we speak, on a mandate for those covered by the mental health department. And they will soon find themselves facing a vaccine mandate. She's going to remove the option of being tested regularly. That's a stopgap. And now everybody, whether it's mental health care or regular physical medical health care will have to get the shot in order to hold their jobs and to treat people who are ill. I mean, we're not talking about basketball players or football players, baseball players. We're talking about people who work with the most vulnerable people in our city, state, and nation. They need to take a shot and take the vaccine in order to protect those people. So those people can go into the hospital, be treated, recover, go home, and resume their lives. And our nation can resume its proper economic life. Now, where I disagree with Hochul is opening up and saying, well, we're going to bring in the National Guard, we're going to bring in foreign workers, we're going to accelerate nursing graduates so they can get licensed and work in these facilities. Well, one, if we bring in foreign workers, it's a medical drain on those nations that are suffering right now because their hospitals are overwhelmed. So now we're going to withdraw their medical professionals to come to the States to fill our tiny gaps. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't talk about moving the National Guard because National Guard's people, personnel with medical training, already work in hospitals and other healthcare settings. So we're going to draw them from their regular jobs and then create a deficiency in their place of work. All right, so she needed to think that a lot better. I understand she's the governor and she has to try to fill in gaps, but I would have thought that a little bit differently, and just would have maybe lengthened the amount of time people have to get vaccinated and to do a greater effort at educating them and making them understand the necessity of getting a shot, so they will feel not so much pushed against the wall and pushed in the corner, but feel the necessity of doing it because it's a service to the memory of their colleagues who died fighting COVID over the last 18 months.
Mona, one last point on this. What I would make sure though is that I would have some sort of mechanism in place to oversee and make sure that the various processes, schedules, appointments, surgeries, all those things that are going on in hospitals and medical facilities are not directly impacted as much because of any staff that may have to be released or fired. I would make sure that I'm putting that information public so nothing kind of comes back around later on and say, well, X amount of people, had their treatment delayed because there weren't enough, medical staff available. There were X amount of delays. Surgeries couldn't happen. I would make sure that I would have some eyeballs on that on a state level and say, if anything over like a certain percentage of surgeries being delayed or whatever, automatic red flag. We jumping in there, rectifying the situation and making sure that these things don't come back. First, don't have a impact on anybody's lives, but also don't come back and impact the administration later on as well.
No, both. What you both say does make sense. Does make a lot of sense, but. And I get what you're saying, Michael, their colleagues died. But the way I look at it is that, yeah, their colleagues died, but they were also there and they also put their lives on the line. So her putting her foot down in this manner, COVID is endemic. We have to live with it. It's not going anywhere. We have to live with it. We also need to unmask our kids. Everybody was like, when the vaccine comes, things are going to get back to normal. Things are still not getting back to normal with the vaccine. But the fact of the matter is those individuals, they put their lives on the line and they are being just like discarded and treated like trash. And it's not right. And for me, and I know I'm not the only one, but with me, I don't have a short-term memory. I hold grudges. For this one here, I have a problem with it because it's not how we treat people that put their lives on the line for us. But
So hold on, Mona.
I'm just one person and one vote. So hey,
let me reverse it and put Mona on the spot. Hold on, you're not a Jumani fan because you're not voting for him. You because of all his stances. Governor Hochul just lost your vote as well too. Are you just not voting at all for governor?
I'm voting down ballot.
Okay, got you.
Mm-hmm. I am voting down ballot.
Monica can only vote in general elections.
Got you.
As I understand it. So.
That's actually not true. That's actually not true. I did register and become a Democrat so that I could vote in the primary. But yeah, no, I'll be voting in the future only in general elections. So yeah.
I had one more thing about Hochul's mandate and the necessity of mandates. I mean, if you take the argument you're making is the same one cops make whenever one of them commits police brutality or does something that results in a loss of life or something that the public gets angry at. You know, they talk about how they are always out there, you know, the thin blue line. So therefore, you should give us more leeway. No, that's not the way it works. People need to take responsibility for their behaviors. We entrust you with our lives, with public safety. Same thing, the same sort of public safety we entrust healthcare workers with. They already take required vaccines in order to work in those settings. COVID-19 is no different. And if they really are heroes and they care about the people who they work with, who lost their lives in the battle against this disease to save other people's lives, they should take the vaccine so they can continue the fight. And that's the way in which Hochul should have posed it, not necessarily with her foot down on a mandate and going to churches saying, you know, God gave us the vaccines, take it. I get that. That's okay, but you need to make people feel that they're a part of it, that nobody's being pushed into a corner, that they're doing it because of an obligation of service to their fellow New Yorkers, their fellow human beings, and it's the right thing to do. And it's a safe and proven effective vaccine across the board. You know, people started talking about, you know, we need to achieve herd immunity through vaccines. Well, we can't achieve herd immunity if people aren't going to take the vaccine in large enough numbers. I don't quite know exactly what the herd immunity will be for COVID, but I would suspect it's going to be much more than 95% of New Yorkers getting the shot, and then seeing where it goes. And to me, it's also about protecting the youngest children who aren't eligible for the shot and probably won't be able to get it for another couple of years. And so, if you care about children, you care about the elderly, you care about people that are in hospitals, nursing homes, and other facilities, get the vaccine. If you call the healthcare workers heroes in the early beginnings of this pandemic, then honor their memory and their sacrifice then by getting the shot. It's very simple. It's very clear, and it's the right thing to do.
Okay, I hear you. She's still not getting my votes. I'm sorry. So yeah. So I want to close with my favorite mayor. My favorite mayor and Rikers.
I'm sorry. Oh, you talked about. I'm sorry. You said Rikers?
Yeah, I want to talk about my favorite mayor and Rikers. Okay, my favorite mayor and Rikers. So everything that's going on with Rikers, first of all, they haven't hired new correction officers since 2019, right? Second of all, the feds did a report, and everything that all of these elected officials, the new in thing is to visit Rikers, everything they're observing, the problems, the issues, the conditions, all of that was cited in the feds report from May. And this mayor has done nothing about it. Did he finally go and visit Rikers, by the way? Was Eric able to shame him into going to visit Rikers, or he hasn't gone yet?
No, he went Monday afternoon, a surprise visit, and as we predicted, he was going to go with his flunkies, his staff, and he wound up visiting an empty intake center. He did not meet with any inmates, did not meet with any correction officers, did not meet with any wardens or captains, just met with his yes people to declare mission accomplished, and we're making things better at Rikers. And he told a reporter, one of our reporters, Julian Marsh, our City Hall bureau chief, asked him, well, why didn't you talk to correction officers? Why didn't you talk to inmates? His condescending remark was that I've visited in the past. I've talked to inmates. I've talked to correction officers. I didn't need to talk to anybody today to understand, to get a better sense of what's happening. He did not say he read the report by the federal monitor, Steve Martin. And obviously he did not. He did what we said he would do in the Post. He praised his commissioners for the work that they've done. Wow. He should have been embarrassed to even utter those kind of words for people who have ruined the system. As mayor, he's presided over an administration that has had several federal monitors at NYCHA.
Yep.
You've got a monitor at the NYPD. You have a monitor at corrections. I think there's another monitor somewhere else too. And he hasn't really made concrete changes in those places. So when he leaves office, his legacy will be federal monitor reports piled to the ceiling with nothing to show for it. You know who else didn't bother going to Rikers? The city council speaker, Corey Johnson. Members of the city council who thought about going to Rikers should have been embarrassed, because all they ever did talk about was closing the place. Nobody talked about how we're going to improve conditions there to at least make it tolerable for the correction officers and for the detainees who are there. Because for years we've known it's a deteriorating place. It's old. It's not entirely safe. It has infrastructure that needed to be changed. If I'm not mistaken, I think I read a story, either it was one of ours in the New York Post or another paper, that talked about needed construction that was scheduled prior to this mayor becoming mayor, that the Bloomberg administration was going to break ground on a new facility. This mayor stopped the funding. And while he's taking credit for wanting to close Rikers and having his 4-borough jail plan, when it first came up and was pushed by City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, the real villain in this, he fought that. And then he caved to that. And that's why Rikers is closing, and you have this accelerated push to try to close even faster. But there are no jails to put criminals in. As we wrote in today's New York Post, the mayor is acting as though you drive down the population of criminals and detainees at Rikers, and somehow, magically, criminals are going to decide they're going to proportionally reduce their crime to reduce their numbers going to before the courts. It's entire fantasy. You want to close Rikers, you want to reduce numbers, you want people out in the street, and you have an incoming council member who ran for Queens DA, Tiffany Caban, who thinks that crime victims and the murder victims' families should sit down with the murderers and understand them and understand the shoes that they were in and reconcile. You know what? You were looking at teenagers. There was one kid recently who was 16, killed by a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old. Yeah. That kid gets out in a couple of years. If he's convicted of the crime, he gets out at 18. Their son will be in his grave for eternity, while this kid gets an opportunity to live a life. And that's something I think parents want to sit down and talk to the son's killer about the life they're going to have. They want to know why you took my son away, and why aren't you serving longer than 3 to 4 years in a juvenile detention facility instead of being in a prison for 25 to life.
Yeah. Leonato, what's your take on de Blasio's handling of Rikers and I guess his recent visit now on Monday that we learned about?
Mona, it's hard to even really get onto this topic too much with when it comes to, the current mayor. He just reminds me of this old Bugs Bunny cartoon where this guy kept going into the doctor with a foot in his mouth, and the doctor keeps asking him, like, what is the problem? Why? He just, doctor, every time I open my mouth, my foot just jumps into my mouth and stuff. I mean, the stuff that the guy says is just amazing, especially this last press conference where it was, you talk about like passing the buck and stuff, but when he was talking about Rikers and the deaths, the amount of deaths that's happened there recently, he was kind of just saying, like, shifting blame, like saying, well, this, those problems were coming, prior to me as well. This has been in place since, mayors before me. And then even went as far as saying a comment like, oh, also, a lot of people go into Rikers in bad health as well too and stuff. And I'm like, bro, like, talk about shifting blame there. Like, wow, it's everybody's fault except yours, and like. And so it's I'm really kind of over this guy. I think he kind of needs to ride off into the sunset already. And it's just sad that so many people, and honestly, lives are still going to be in jeopardy these last few months that he has in office, because this is the true definition of a lame duck. And unfortunately, this city is not at a point where our leadership can really be in lame duck status. We really need folks that are courageous, doing the work, and taking accountability of what's happening.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's I like your cartoon analogy, because that's exactly what we're dealing with. He just doesn't take responsibility for anything, and I think what people need to understand is that he just really doesn't care, and he's not even trying to fake it. So it's unfortunate what's going on, because those inmates at Rikers do not deserve to be living in those conditions. But I guess this is just going to be another problem that's going to have to be addressed by our next mayor. And our next mayor has a lot on his plate. He will have a lot on his plate. And
He has too much on his plate.
Yeah, and he's going to have to hit the ground running, like really hit the ground running. Have you guys heard any rumors on like any of the possible appointments or commissioners? Eric's possible. We know Adonis is going to be like TLC transportation commissioner. Okay, we know that. What about
That's
the
a
other?
given. That's a given.
What about the other appointments? Yeah, we know Adonis got that.
No,
And
I mean, I think the Eric Kemp has been tight-lipped on purpose about that. You don't want to get into a situation where you're counting your chickens before your eggs hatch, which I get it. The general, it is what it is, but you want to stay focused, right? You want your team focused. You want everybody really focused, running through the finish line at top speed, and then once that kind of happens, that you take that same momentum into the transitioning part of things as well too. So I think it's been intentional, and I think it's a good idea to just stay focused right now and finish the job that needs to be done.
Good point. Michael, have you heard anything? Is it also quiet? You guys are not hearing any whispers?
No, just speculation as to who might be his chancellor. The guy Banks from the Eagle Academy Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a name. This is a name that's out there. There's some speculation as to who may be some of the women he's looking at to be police commissioner, because he's made that his priority is putting a woman in as police commissioner. So there have been some names floated around that, but really only those two positions we have seen or heard of any names around there. Leonardo is right. It would be, it would be putting the cart before the horse for him to start looking at naming commissioners when he hasn't even won the election yet. I mean, I would be in favor of him taking office November 30th, if possible, as a way to celebrate to accelerate the de Blasio's early departure, because he apparently he checked out long before this year. I think he checked out during his run for president, and he really hasn't checked back in since then. I also wanted to add, I added it on Twitter. I raised the question: is why is it this mayor seems to have dissed the concerns and priorities of city agencies that are predominantly Black and Latino? And I'm talking about corrections. I'm talking about school safety. I'm talking about EMS that are part of the FDNY. The EMS has been constantly fighting for some level of pay parity with their firefighter brothers and sisters. And this mayor has not made any effort to try to achieve that for them. I think that's shameful. I think it's shameful that he's ignored the needs of the correction officers and not. He always wants to put more cops in the street, but he doesn't talk about putting more cops in the most dangerous precinct in New York City. That's Rikers, where the men and women patrol unarmed. I've been to Rikers visiting. I went on a family day thing about 25 years ago, and I was struck by the physical oppression of the place. I understood why the warden who invited me had a family day for the family of the correction officers. They needed to understand why mommy and daddy come home feeling the way they do. Mommy and daddy are coming home to try to decompress from a very oppressive environment. If it's oppressive for the inmates and detainees, it's just as oppressive for the officers who are there in thin numbers. Yeah, cops talk about being the thin blue line. You want to see a thin blue line? Go work at Rikers as a correction officer, as a cook, as a social worker, as a nurse, as a doctor. These are not the nicest people you have to deal with. Yes, some are willing to be there and do their time or abide while they wait for their trial. But then you also have those who are just hardcore bad guys who are sociopaths and don't care about anybody's rules. And will do so. I mean, you read in our paper where Steve Levin, the councilman, was visiting, and some guy threw a liquid at him. We believe it was urine. I mean, so correction officers are subject to that every day. Feces, urine, other kinds of fluids, verbal disrespect. I mean, you've had female officers and female staff who've been sexually assaulted by inmates. And their hands are tied. They can't put them in solitary. They can't do what they used to do to punish them for that kind of outlandish behavior, because people like Mayor de Blasio, Steve Levin, Jumaane Williams, Corey Johnson, and others have tied their hands. Yes, no inmate who's a detainee should be abused, but those who break the rules and abuse others, there needs to be some level of punishment. And solitary confinement, or whatever you want to call it, isolation, whatever you call it, was a punitive detention, whatever. That was a way of saying you go this far and no farther, and this is where we're going to stick you until you learn to comport yourself, or until your trial is over and you're being shipped upstate.
Yeah,
this mayor has been its appointment, I believe, to Black employees, whether it's at NYCHA, it's at corrections. Yes. It's at EMS. It's school safety. You're running with the Black son who you take to see, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Fine. But what about the men and women of color who've been counting on you to advocate for them in their jobs?
No, you're right. And Greg Floyd has actually pointed that out as well. How he treats city employees from majority Black and Hispanic unions who have majority Black and Hispanic members. But I don't want to channel my inner Charles Barron right now, because I'll probably say something that's going to offend so many people. All I'll say is Bill de Blasio has Thomas Jefferson tendencies. I'll just say that. People can figure it out. But that's the bottom line. That's all I have to say.
It sounds like Kanye when he made his statement about George Bush.
Yeah. That's all I have to say. Bill de Blasio and Thomas Jefferson are in the same WhatsApp group. So, yeah, that's as far as I'm going to channel my inner Charles Barron right now. But gentlemen, thank you so very much for this lively conversation. It's always such a pleasure to get your insight and your take on this. And I especially like the fact that we don't always agree on everything. Actually, lots of times we disagree on everything, which is actually a good thing. But for our viewers, I hope that this has been informational. I hope it's been educational as well. And my advice is just start paying attention. Start paying attention to what our elected officials are doing, what they're saying and what they're doing. Start paying attention. And then just coming back one last time to Kathy Hochul and Jumaane Williams and this possible Democratic primary. My gut is definitely the Republicans are hoping, they have fingers crossed, toes crossed, legs crossed, everything crossed, hoping that Jumaane Williams will end up being the Democratic nominee. So we'll see, we'll see what happens if he actually runs. And hopefully next week, maybe we'll have some clarity on whether Tish James will run for governor. So since we don't know, but since we don't know, and since Leonato brought up, well, Mona, who would you vote for? All right, listen, I would vote for Tish in a heartbeat. So that's who I would vote for, because as city councilwoman, she was always there for parents. As public advocate, it was the same. And as attorney general, she is still available. So, every step of the way, she hasn't changed who she is, and she hasn't changed having an open door. Unlike Jumaane and Bill de Blasio, when they've changed. I don't know what the hell happened, but they've changed. But Tish hasn't. So I'm gonna put it out there for Tish. Let us know. Please let us know so that we can
No, Mona. Jumaane has an open door policy as well too. You just got to get past the gate and the armed cars. His door is open after that.
Oh, now you're Seth Barron. Now you're Seth Barron. That's great.
You channeled your inner Seth Barron. That's what you just did. That's right. Oh my gosh, that one was good. That one was good. That's so true. So again, thank you so very much for joining us tonight at On the Spot, and we look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Mr. Coelho, Mr. Benjamin, many thanks. Be safe.
Pleasure.
Well.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.